You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London. I'm Alice Lagnado. Welcome to Curtain Up, the programme that tells you about Russian culture in London. We've got news and views about the capital's most exciting exhibitions, films, concerts, plays and festivals with a Russian flavour. With me in the studio today are Julian Gallant, the director of Pushkin House, and Dr Thierry Morel. Dr Morel is an art historian and the man behind an upcoming exhibition of 18th century art from the Hermitage. This is an exhibition with a fascinating story behind it, isn't it?
Yes, because this is one of the most important collections, European collections, which was bought by Catherine the Great in 1779. And it's a collection also of a very important character because he was the first Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole, the first Prime Minister of England. And it's also one of the most important artistic collection in terms of the range of artists that it counts.
Could you give us some examples?
Of course, I mean, ranges from Rembrandt, Velazquez, Poussin, Murillo, Van Dyck, Rubens, Le Sueur. I mean, so you see, it's literally the top.
Incredible collection, isn't it? Thierry, you are, of course, an absolute, you know the Hermitage backwards. You've had long involvement with it.
It's difficult to know the Hermitage backwards.
Well, the question is...
As much as I try.
Have these works been on public display in the Hermitage for all those 250 years?
Well, actually, some of them have been. They had a very fascinating history because they were shipped from England to St. Petersburg. And then, of course, there was for the Hermitage of Catherine the Great, of her own museum. And then little by little, as years went by, the Tsars of Russia decided to display those works publicly. But occasionally, and it's interesting, a few pictures were handpicked by either the Tsarina or the Tsar to be selectively displayed in their own apartments. And then, of course, just before the Second World War, a few pictures got sold. And
why were they sold and who
in the 20s and late 20s and early 30s? Well, I think Russia was in need of funds, and some works had to be sold, sadly. But what's quite interesting is the Hermitage staff was always incredibly protective of those works, and they did everything they could to save them. And so sometimes they would hide the pictures in order to disobey the orders from above and keep the pictures safely at the Hermitage.
Hermitage is an extraordinary place, isn't it? I mean, I've heard a story, and you're probably going to say this is not true, but the Hermitage, if the whole contents were sold, it would pay for America 6 times over.
I'm not surprised.
Now, how did you select? You couldn't bring the whole collection. How did you select which ones you wanted to bring? And what was the process of getting the ball rolling? Because we all know that that's not a simple thing to do.
First of all, I should say that Sir Robert, the Prime Minister, was living in Downing Street before he moved to his country estate called Houghton Hall. And he had this amazing Palladian mansion built for the collection. Especially for the collection.
And that's out in the countryside, isn't it?
It's not far from London, and it's next to Sandringham, the Queen's shooting estate. And what he did is he commissioned the best architects of the time, Gibbs, William Kent, to design the best possible temple for his art collection. And therefore the artists, and William Kent in particular, who was in charge of the interiors, had the pictures in mind. They had seen them, they knew what they looked like, their format, their subject matters. And William Kent, for instance, designed the rooms as a kind of a project.
Around the paintings.
Around the pictures. So in fact, those designs have been preserved, and we're going to display them as well. So they show how the hang was done, or at least was intended. And of course, the inventories also have survived. That's why we are able to reconstruct the interiors of the house as they were.
Is the house in its 18th century state, or has it been added to a lot over the years?
No, that's the beauty of it. The house actually has been completely preserved. It's one of the rare examples in Europe, in fact in the world, of a house which has been left almost untouched. So to come back to Julian's question, it's basically we try to reconstruct the rooms as best as possible, and really sometimes absolutely identically. So all the pictures we selected are the pictures which were there in the first place. So that was the main the main way we chose the painting.
What about the whole process? Some people might think it's possible to just drive up a truck to the Hermitage, ask permission if they wouldn't mind lending the pictures, and drive the truck back. That's probably not. It's probably not as simple as that.
Not
is it?
Quite. No, I don't think Professor Petrovsky would
yes
would be keen.
So why has he allowed these marvels to come out?
I think the curators and the directors and the exhibition committee of the Hermitage have agreed to this because they saw the historical importance, the significance of this reconstruction. And it's also a very wonderful way of showing the history of the Hermitage and highlighting its importance in terms of historical importance, but also artistic importance. When you see all those masterpieces there united in this temple, which was created for them, you realize what a great choice it was and what an inspired purchase Catherine had done.
Well, that's quite typical of Catherine, isn't it? She was very much into the arts, all kinds of the arts, and so I'm not surprised she made that kind of purchase thinking about the recent exhibition also from the Hermitage that's currently on in Scotland.
Yes, which I saw, which I love. Catherine the Great is, as you know, is one of the most extraordinary rulers in world history. I mean, it's when you think, I mean, being a Frenchman, when I saw the house of Voltaire, the copy she made of Voltaire's house, and the fact that she corresponded with Voltaire and Diderot and so the learned men of the time. And then when you read her writings, her memoirs and so forth, I mean, you realize what an extraordinary personality she was.
And she was not, in fact, Russian to start with.
She was German to start with.
She was German, but learnt the Russian language and became and mastered it, or mastered that. Became very much involved with Russian culture, and thought about involving Russia with the rest of Europe as well.
In fact, she became more Russian than the Russians, really. And I think one should say that nationality really comes with a passion for the land, for the country, and she definitely had that,
and a wide view of the arts. It wasn't just opera and theatre. No. She liked, she bought this collection of art. She wrote the first Russian children's story, so a kind of Renaissance woman, if you like, in that sense. You're listening to the Voice of Russia in London. This is Curtain Up, the programme about Russian culture in the capital. I'm Alice Lagnado, and with me in the studio are Julian Gallant, the director of Pushkin House, and art historian Dr Thierry Morel. What about getting back to another aspect of Julian's question? What about the practical side of getting this exhibition over? As Julian hinted, it's not just a matter of...
Well, we all know the story about the From Russia exhibition, don't we, in 2009, that there was a threat of seizure. There's legislation now in place that state assets cannot be touched and so on. So there's that history behind it. It's partly that, and it's also interesting to know just how you transport these kind of miracles.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yes. Well, all those works, and also I should add, actually, that the collection wasn't left in one place. I mean, most of the paintings are at the Hermitage. But a few pictures were dispatched to other museums in the course of the 20th century. And so a few pictures are now at the Pushkin Museum. And in Moscow, exactly. And others are at Tsarskoye Selo, and others at Pavlovsk, and
various estates in Russia, for listeners who don't know.
And other museums. Khabarovsk and so forth. So those pictures will have to be transported separately. And obviously for security reason, you don't put all the pictures in the same load, so you won't have all those. So it's a very, very complex and big infrastructure. So the best art transporters are used, which are the ones that the Hermitage only uses, or the Pushkin. And it's a gigantic operation.
Are they deframed, the pictures, or are they?
No, the pictures are not deframed. They are sent with their frames, except one painting, because one painting we discovered, and it's a Poussin. It's a picture which is a very important picture of the Holy Family, one of the best masterpieces of Poussin. We realized that actually the frame was left at Houghton.
Wow. Isn't that incredible?
So the original frame that was designed by Kent. So this frame we're going to try to
reunite
with the painting.
Are you really? I mean,
yes.
So you will actually be taking a Poussin and you will be framing the Poussin.
Yes.
That is extraordinary.
To ask a very basic question, how are the paintings shipped over? What kind of transport is best? How does that work and how long does it take?
Well, I haven't been transported yet. It will be sort of a combination of trucks, sort of road transport and ship. But I'd rather remain sort of... Yeah. I think they should be kept quite discreet.
Absolutely, but you're not expecting any problems of the kind we've seen in the past with customs?
I don't think so, because there's no question of provenance. We know. And I think the Russian museums are all behind it. The one thing I should add, actually, is that I received, when I suggested this idea, an immense support from museum curators and directors of the various museums I mentioned.
In Russia.
Yes. They were incredibly helpful, and without their support, it would never have happened. But I think it shows their vision.
So, have you been trying to get this project off the ground for some time, or is
Yes, it took about 3 years.
That's not really long in
it's not very long in those terms, especially for the size of the scale of it. And a few works of art will come also from the United States, because during the sales in the 30s, a few works were sold to Mr. Mellon, for instance, or Mr. Gulbenkian. And so some works are at the National Gallery in Washington and others at the Metropolitan. And they have agreed also to lend them, inspired by the Russian gesture.
Do you see this, Thierry, looking at it a bit wider, do you see this as is there a political gain from this? Is there a development of the relationship between Russia and Britain?
Well, I very much hope so, because I very much hope so. I mean, I think Catherine knew perfectly well that through art she could improve sort of relationship with those countries and also the economical aspect of it. And I believe that ignorance is the reason why people don't communicate. And I think such an exhibition should really allow the Russian people and the English people and in fact the world to understand each other better. In my experience, I find that Russia is not well known. I mean, the way Russian culture and Russian people are not.
Will the British Prime Minister come along to?
You should ask him. But I very much hope that it will be embraced by all sides. Really.
Are you planning to do special? I mean, how are you going to? I mean, I don't like to use the word market it, but how are you going to get everybody to know about this and make sure that nobody can say, "Oh, I didn't know it was on."
Well, from this interview and afterwards, we'll have an article in the Mail on Sunday about the exhibition. So from now on, I hope and we've got a marketing campaign which hopefully will reach everybody, both in Russia and in the rest of the world.
I mean, obviously it isn't far from London, but it's still slightly hard to possibly...
Well, it's very easy access. You know, there's a train that goes every hour, and we'll also will increase the means of transportation to make it as easy as possible.
You mean from the station or whatever?
Exactly, from the station or from London, yes. And also we will have coaches and so forth. So I think it should be as easy as possible. And then also it's an added bonus, because it's one thing to see artworks in an urban setting, but to see those works in the magic grounds of Houghton Hall and Norfolk, it will be spectacular. And I think it will be an experience that you won't forget ever. And it's also once in a lifetime opportunity. So I think it's worth doing a little more effort, because it will be rewarded, I think.
And of course there are young Russians in London who've been brought up here who may not have been to the Hermitage very much and would like to go as well. I know that Russians flock to major Russian art exhibitions and theatre productions here, so you've got those 200,000, 300,000 people as well. Yes,
and then just to tell you, I mean, even if the exhibition is not announced, we've already had requests from groups, from curators, from patrons of the art to come and to... So I think it's a good sign. It means people are excited, and it's something different and new. So I think I've been there so many times that I can vouch for you that it's the most amazing place. I mean, Nicolas Penny, the director of the National Gallery, actually said it will allow you to see those works in a different light. Some of them may be familiar for those who know the Hermitage, but when you see them there, it will be another experience. And I think that's going to be historical.
There's no doubt that to see a work in the private setting where it was originally conceived, rather than on a neutral museum wall, I think that
actually, to be fair, the Hermitage or the other museums are not neutral. You know, they are wonderful spaces in any case, but it's just a particular design that was created for them. So that's quite special.
Well,
wonderful.
Sounds fantastic, and we all look forward to that. Thank you very much for coming on our programme, Dr Morel, Dr Thierry Morel, and thank you to Julian Gallant again for joining us today in this edition of Curtain Up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
This is The Voice of Russia in London. I'm Alice Lagnado. Stay with us.